Good morning, and you are welcome to part 2 of our lecture series on budgeting and budgetary control. In the first part, we went through to look at the very preeminent thing, which is getting the data and analyzing the data. All right, but here in part 2, we are looking at forecasting. So we've gotten the data from the department, perhaps, and we want to use that data to forecast. So we are looking at forecasting. All right. So that is what we'll be looking at. Now, it's good to go to each and every department. Let's say you go to marketing department, you go to sales department, let's say supply and distribution department, all the data that you needed. You've done the average of them. You found those ones that kept repeating themselves, all right, the mode of them. All right, so now we are going to use the information that we got to actually predict future outcome. So forecasting is just using analyzed data to predict future trends or outcome. You can also say pattern. All right. So basically, that is what you are trying to do. So it is very, very important that even as you are budgeting in your entity, maybe you are the CFO, maybe you are maybe the accountant who is in charge of everything. And so once you get the data, you analyze the data to see those ones that the average of them, those ones that actually happen most often and all those things. You're able to set up your Excel template to actually project the figures into the next year. All right, so basically that is that. Now, when you are doing that, there are two main ways of actually going about your prediction, your future prediction. We have the simple prediction. And when I mean simple prediction, this is where people just sit in their office and say, "Oh, our revenue will increase by 5%." So what they do is that they take last year's revenue, then they just do 5% on that, which really doesn't give you a scientific way of doing your prediction. Yeah. But we want to look at an advanced methodology, a more advanced methodology or a scientific way of doing it. And here we are going to pick on the things we've done before, high-low method. Then we are going to do something like using the learning curve. We are going to also talk about using a linear regression. 4, we will talk about time series. These are the ones that we will look at. But I'm going to take my time, not rush it, and deal with this too in this video and take the rest in another section. All right. So now let's look at high-low method. This is something that we've done before. All right. So we will rather take an example and work with that. Okay. So like I said, let's use this question to refresh our minds on the high-low method. Now, what is the high-low method's essence on the forecasting that we are trying to do? You see, the high-low method is used to segregate fixed cost from variable cost, right? And you know, if something is fixed, then when you are making the forecast or your prediction with it, you know it is fixed. It is that line cannot leave your financial statement. It is there all the time. All right. And you know that some, like let's say for rent, whether you produce or you don't produce, you be paying rent. And you have some expenses too that are tied to your level of activity. All right. So let's say if it is labor, you are looking at labor training. All right. So it is tied to that. all right, and the labor is dependent on how much you are producing. You see that, and so you are able to make proper varying forecast with some of the items. But remember how we used to do high-low method? We used to do high-low method. So giving this example where we have to use forecast the total cost. All right. Of course, when you do your fixed cost and when you do your variable cost, you get your total cost, and it will help us project it, all right, or forecast it. So remember how we used to do the high-low method, the 4 steps involved. We need to pick the high units with their cost, all right. So if and the lower one, and then step 2 will be to use those information to calculate the variable cost per unit. So if I look into these ones, think the highest one is 420. So in terms of the units and the costs here, these are total cost. So the unit I'm looking at 420, and its cost is 2,400, right? So that is that. Then the lowest, so I had the highest, then the lowest is like 300. So you just put in 300. Its level of activity is 2160. So if I subtract, of course, if you look at the formula is you are going to do, it is variable cost per unit you are trying to look at. So you do the cost as the numerator, all right? So the highest cost minus the highest cost of the highest activity minus the lowest cost of the lowest activity as your numerator, and you do the units also downstairs. Where's my calculator? Okay, so I have this one here, but I thought I had the scientific one around. All right, so we can use this. Okay, so if I do this, I think this is 240. I don't need a calculator for that yet. Then this is 120. So if I'm doing my variable cost per unit, then that is going to be 240 over 120, and that is like 2 cedis per unit. All right, so that is that. Now, the next thing for me to do is to do the fixed cost part, right? And we learned that total cost is equal to a total fixed cost, all right, multiply by into bracket variable cost per unit, variable cost per unit multiply by level of activity. Okay, which the level of activity, we can pick any of them. So to find the fixed cost part, we know that total fixed cost therefore will be equal to total cost minus into brackets, right? Oh, so this is plus, sorry, it's not multiplication. Variable cost per unit multiply by level of activity. And if you remember when we did it in the second video, the second lecture, we realized that the total we can pick from using this one, any of them anyway. So you can start with the highest one minus the variable cost per unit is 2. Then the level of activity for this one is 420 units. So I think this is 840. And so if I do 2,400 minus 840, I have total cost to be the total fixed cost to be 1560 cedis. So that is that. That is my. You can substitute it into the others. All right. So we have been asked to find the total fixed cost, and this is where we find our total fixed cost. If I want to know the variable cost for that too, I think the variable cost is here. All right. So basically, that is what you go through and do. So you know that clearly. If you have your total cost to be 2,400, and it should be equal to 1560. This is your fixed cost plus. I mean, this is clearly like 840. So basically, that is what you have. You have been able to segregate the cost into fixed and all right. So now, given that we have to use it for 500 units, we can do same. All right. So now the level of activity for us here is 500 units. So we know that fixed cost doesn't change. That's the thing. Fixed costs don't change. So we have been asked to find the total fixed cost, but in this case, we are using, it said that find the variable cost per unit and the total fixed cost. Forecast the total cost, and we know that total cost formula is here, and fixed cost doesn't change with the level of activity. So therefore, our total cost will be equal to, do you remember this formula? You remember? All right, so you remember it, the equation. We know our fixed cost is 1560, and we know that the total variable cost is 2 cedis multiplied by the level of activity of 500. Total cost, this one is 1000, will be 2560, as simple as that. All right. So basically, that is that. We know and we can use that. All right, and that is that. So basically, that is how you do high-low method. Much of it was done in our initial lessons, and that is that. So now, what we need to do is to go in there and go to the second one, which is my major objective for today, is the learning curve. The learning curve. The learning curve. Now, what is the learning curve all about? You see, in every organization, the learning curve is a labor cost scale. All right. In every organization, what you do realize is that if you bring in new staff, what happens is that these people, they will be making more mistakes into what they will be doing. They make more mistakes, more mistakes. And you see, at the time, you realize that their efficiency is very low. Learning curve is all about the efficiency. All right. It is all about efficiency. And so we are using the learning curve to determine labor-related cost. All right. Labor-related cost, because it's about learning. All right. It's about learning. And it is actually the quantitative method that you use to estimate a more accurate labor-related cost. So basically, that is that. So learning curve is just a quantitative method that is used to estimate a more accurate labor-related costs. All right. And so very soon you see that we'll be learning things like target costing. You see it's relevant. You see that we'll be learning things like life cycle costing, and you see its relevance. In both cases, of course, we'll be also talking about decision making. So you realize that these are very, very important. The learning curve is very, very important. Now, what a learning curve is just trying to say is that when you bring in new staff and they start afresh, they start learning their trade afresh in your office. What happens is that by repetition, no, they will be doing the things over and over and over again. So by them repeating the activities, you see that they will gain some sort of speed. So by repetition, they will gain speed. And when they gain speed, what you realize is that they start getting better. They start getting better at what they do. So the same thing, when you start learning, you are learning afresh. When you want to use this platform to learn your management accounting or corporate reporting and all the other courses that you see there, financial reporting, financial management, corporate reporting, financial reporting, management accounting, and all those tax is all on this platform. All right. So when you start learning, you need to start afresh, but you don't stop there. You keep using the channel, and you realize that you are gaining some speed in what you are doing, then you start getting better. All right. You see, when you are learning afresh, it takes a very long time for you to assimilate and understand. But once you keep doing the thing and keep doing the thing and keep doing the thing, you start getting speed, you start getting better, and all of a sudden, the time that you spend is reduced. So in an office, time to complete a product, you realize that it reduces. Bam. That is it. So this is what you see. And so that is the learning curve. That is what we are trying to learn. So as a laborer becomes more familiar with the production process or the production of a new product, the average time the person is spending on will be also declining. So basically that is that. So the simple law about the learning curve is the right law. And this is what the right law says. This is what the right law says. Now, the right law states that the cumulative output, as cumulative output doubles. So get to understand that. And let's try to illustrate it. As cumulative output doubles, and so you see that there is cumulation of output. All right. As cumulative output doubles, what happens is that the cumulative average of time or average time per unit falls to a fixed percentage. I mean, the learning curve rate, the efficiency rate, all right, of the previous average stage. And so this law is very, very important. And that is what we are going to base all our discussion on. Very, very, very important. So as cumulative output doubles, the cumulative average of time spent, all right, falls when you are producing a product and giving a fixed learning rate. All right. Even we that are doing the tuition, when you start teaching, I started teaching ICA somewhere in 2016. All right. So you realize that, and I was writing and I was teaching. So you realize that as you are doing it, you start getting better and better. So it's almost getting to this like 9 years. All right, 9 years. Okay, so that is that. So as cumulative output doubles, so let's say you produce one cumulatively, so it's doubling. And please, so double means that this one doubles to 2, and if this one doubles, it goes to 4. If this one doubles, it goes to 8. All right, so as they double, okay, so basically that is that. So get to know that. So this is output. As output doubles, the average time given a learning curve. So let's say our learning curve or the learning rate, the rate at which the staff learn, or the efficiency rate, all right, okay, is, let's say 80%. All right, so let's say 80%. Now, if let's say when a person produced what do we call it, the 1 unit, let's say it took the person an average time of 200 hours, that one will mean that the total time or the total hours spent of producing 1 unit will be this multiplied by this, that is 200 hours. But we are saying that given a fixed learning rate and the person doubles the production, the cumulative average, this average now will be reducing at the learning rate of the previous one. So the learning rate of the previous one, so this is 80%. So it will reduce, basically that is that. So if you now look at it, what you see in there is that the 200, 80% of the 200. So let's do 80% of 200. That is like 160. So you have 160 here. It doesn't mean that the two product is going to take 160 hours, but the average of it when we say average, it means something plus something. So let's say 10 plus 6 will give you divided by 2. That's the average. That will give you 8. So that is what we are saying. So it doesn't mean every product took 8. No. It doesn't mean every one product took 8. But it means that as one product took a lot of time, the other didn't. So the average of it, all right? So don't say every product is 8 hours. No. It's the average. So get to understand the average. It doesn't mean that every product takes 8 hours. No. But the average, when you bring them together and you strike, because one is taking 10 hours, one is taking 6 hours, but the average of it, all right? And it goes on and on. So this one will give us like 320 hours. And it goes on and on. You do 80% of the previous, all right? So 80% of the previous. And that will give me 128 hours, all right? When you multiply it by your 4, you have something like 512 hours. All right. So that is that. And if you want to continue, it's 80% of the previous. And so what we have here is 128 by 80. Okay. So that is like 102.4. And if you multiply that by your 8, you are getting something around 819.2 hours. All right. So that is that. Now, what you should understand is that the average is not the actual time, like I've explained. This average is not the actual time, but it is the middle of the two. So you don't say the average is this average, for example, is the actual time per unit. No. But it is the middle point. All right. So you see, one is more than the average of 8. You see, 10 is more than the average of 8. Then another one too is below. And so that is how it goes. All right. So you need to really understand the concept very well. So the average is not the normal actual time, but the midpoint. All right. So that is that. Now, with this thing that we have done, we can put it into mathematics and put it into geometry. And now, so in geometric formularization, what will happen is that we will have y is equal to a x raised to the power b. All right. Now, that is that. So the y, let's explain the formula. What is y? Y is the cumulative average time per unit. Cumulative average time per unit. And so you saw in the thing that we just did that the cumulative average time is shown you. So you see the cumulative, you see them, the cumulative average time. Then what is A? A is the time it takes to produce the very first unit. The time it takes to produce the very first unit. All right, the very first unit. So what is the time? A is the time it takes. Time it takes to produce the first unit. And please stress is on the first unit. All right. So you will be given that. You will be given that obviously. Then what is X? X here is the cumulative output. And the cumulative output is what you saw here. You saw the output. All right. That is the cumulative output. All right. So if you want to do for these 8 products, all right, the 8, you can put in the first 200. All right. You know the average. You can put, so you if you want to know the cumulative time, you can put in the first 200. All right, the first time. Then the cumulative output, which we are talking about, is 8, right? So that is that. But what is B? What is B? B is the slope. B here is the slope. And B slope is given by log R. And what is log R? R is the learning rate. So in our situation, the learning rate was 80%, so or 0.8. Log R over log 2. Log 2 is on your calculator, your scientific calculator. All right, so basically that is that. So that is what the slope is. Because if you are to drop this thing in a curve, as you can see, is something like this. So my constant is, so it is something like this. All right, so basically that is that. And the slope is somewhere here where it starts getting down. All right, so that is where the slope is. All right, so you see clearly that it isn't something like this, because if it becomes something like this, and here this diagram here will be your average, your y-axis, it will be your average time per unit. The x-axis is the cumulative unit. Then you see the slope, which never touches the x-axis, because if it touches the x-axis, we will read x and y to be 0, and it can't be 0. All right, because you realize that you can't have what do we call it, an average time which is a 0 time. Nobody stops learning. All right, so you have to keep learning and learning and learning and learning. So nobody actually has, the learning process doesn't end. So if you were to use this formula to say put in y is equal to our first time, which is 200, and x, what is x? We said x is the cumulative output. We said we are talking about 8 log 0.8 log 2. The log 2 is actually on your calculator. And so let me find my scientific calculator and let's learn how to do this quickly. All right. All right. So I found it. So now let's see how we learn the log concept. Okay. So you see raised to the power log 2. Now, this is my scientific calculator. So there is a part on this line after the calc, the second row. All right. So if you are counting from the shift, it will be 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So if you check that row, you will see log. All right, log. So when I click log, so let me, so when you click log, you will see that there comes a bracket. All right. That is it. But so if the bracket comes, then it means when you finish typing, you need to close the bracket. So if I do 0.8, then I close the bracket like this. All right. Then I press, so I'm dividing. So you see, you can press this one for the division, right? The one after the calc, all right, below the calc. All right. Then you put in log 2, the next one. So I press log again. So you see another bracket has opened. All right, and I'm putting in 2, and I'll close the bracket. You have to close the bracket. Other than that, it will give you a different answer. Some calculators don't even come with brackets, so that one is fine. So now if I punch my equal to, this is the figure that I have. All right, so you see it will be 200 is equal to 8. The log gave me minus 0.3219. All right, I think it's enough. All right, so I'm going to multiply it by the 8. Okay, so basically that is that. So multiply by my 8, and I get a negative answer still. Oh, sorry, it was a raised to the power, so I should have done, oh, okay, you let me use this. So I say 8 raised to the power minus 0.3219. Okay, 3219. So that gives me 0 points. You understand? So that is that. then I multiply by 200. So my answer is, I'm getting an answer that is 104. This answer, that is exactly what I'm getting. All right, have you seen that? So that will be the average time for that particular 8. All right, so that is that. That will be my answer for that particular 8. So you see what I did trying to do this, you find the time here. But of course, I'll multiply it by the 8 units and I'll get my answer. All right, so basically that is that. So that's how you find the average time. All right, so basically that is that. If you do for this, you find this. Do for this, you find this. All right, so you find it. Okay, so basically that is that. The 8. So this one gives me 102.4. All right, so basically that is that. Of course, when I multiply it by my 8, I'll get my the cumulative one. All right, so basically I'll get the total. This is not the, so the total here, I'll get the total. So the first one was here. If you do it, you get this one. But if you want to do the others, you will see they are here. Okay, so basically that is that. That is how you get your problem solved. All right, so then this is the learning curve and all those. So now what is the essence? I think we've already spoken about the essence. This one will help you to determine the average time. It will help you to know the average time it will take for you to produce a batch. So let's say, and this is very, very important because for some people, what you realize is that I have a friend who sews, all right? He sews. Now, if I say I want to sew a specific number of cloth and I have a deadline, and this guy should give me the hours. And if all tailors are doing this, it will be very, very important. So let's say I bring them a job to do, and let's say the job name is Job Tom. All right. And I come there, and he knows that he takes an average time. The average time for him to sew is 2 hours. Let's say it's 2 hours. Okay, then I come to him and I say, I want 200 units of shirts or kaftans or whatever it is. My friend should be able to know how many staff he needs to actually help produce this and the cost that it will come with. Because I'm giving him a deadline of, say, I need a thing in 5 days. So he needs to know the number, because if you multiply this versus this, you know that in total you will need 800 hours. And let's say each staff works 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day. A total of 400 hours is what he has to do. So what you need to do is that when you divide this thing by 8 hours a day, you realize that you are getting something like 8,540. So you are getting something like 50 days. 50 days. And if I'm giving you a deadline of 5 days, then it means that you will need about 10 people to do the work. So basically that is, and that one will help them become efficient. Okay. So basically that is that. All right. So these are some of the things, and we will take a look at the question. Of course, we will look at this question, but let's look at some of the limitations of the learning curve and its applicability. Of course, I've told you that it is used to determine the average time, and by average time, also the total hours. But with what I just did, you realize that it helped me to estimate the cost of labor in a large scale production. So to help you to know the cost of labor that you need to do, like this analysis that I just did. And if you need 10 people, and for the time they work, these people collect, let's say, a fixed amount of 1,000 Ghana cedis, you can able to know that you are going to pay a 10,000. All right. So basically that it helps you to actually know how to estimate your cost. Not only that, you'll be able to do proper budgeting because it provides you insight in labor and the resources required for your production skill. The same example, like you could see. And by that, it will help you to do your proper pricing, because if you know this and you see what your competitors are doing and you have to reduce the hours and become more efficient, as your learning rate goes up, the time will be coming down. If you have to train them for them to have speed. And so you will see that in some companies, when they employ staff, proper companies, when they employ staff, about 3 months, the staff will be going on a training program, sometimes 6 months. And that is why you see management training. You'll be going on training programs. So the moment you start, Kim, your learning rate is very, very high. That is that. And we will use that for performance benchmarking. All right. So we will use it to improve your time evaluation. Use it to improve your time. All right. So basically, that is that. So the key feature is that as the output doubles, the time, all right, at a fixed learning rate, the time drops. All right. The average time drops. All right. So it shows no linear relationship sort of thing, because the rate of improvement is higher in the early stages of the learning curve, and it diminishes over time as experience increases. All right. So basically, that is that. So you realize that, I mean, as you go on to do, the thing reduces. The assumptions that we made, there are some limitations, because it shows some assumptions of consistency, that the learning rate is 80% throughout. But learning rate, some people learn and unlearn, which may not be so in real practice. All right. At some courses, some people will blast it at some time. External factors affect those things. All right. Technology makes the thing go speeds up, but not everybody is also able to use technology as much as they ought to use. All right. So now let's take a look at, we've talked about this. All right. So let's take a look at our question. All right. So I think we could do with this, and I've actually touched on it. So basically, that is that. All right. So this is just an example. But let's look at this illustration. It says that the first unit of a new product is expected to take 100 hours. And so the learning rate is 80% is known. We are supposed to do the average time per unit, for 16 units. And look at the question carefully, because we are doing average time per unit for 16 units. Then we will do average time for what do we call it? 25 units. But look at this. It says that the time it takes to make the 20th unit. So it is not asking for average time to make 20 units, but the 20th unit, and we will learn how to do that. As for these two, I think it's easy. We've already done the log thing that we did, and it gave us this figure. So there is really no need to stress. So if you know what to do, you know your formula, y is equal to the A. So in this case, our y is equal to the first unit, which is 100. All right, which is 100. And what was x? You remember x? X here, we showed you, is the cumulative output. So they are telling you to talk about the 16 units. All right, how many units? The cumulative output. So, and the dot you see there is multiplication, but we prefer to use this one. And we did the log 2 and the log 8 and log 2. You remember is the same thing, 0.3219. All right. So basically that is that. So when you punch your calculator, you should be able to get this figure that is there. So if you do 16 raised to the power minus 0.3219, that gives you 0.4 something. Then you multiply it by 100, and that gives you your 40.96 hours. All right. So if you want to know the total, you can just do the multiplication, and you do the same thing for this. But here, how to use the learning curve to determine the time for an nth unit. In this case, it is 20 units. Now, it's easy. All you are going to do is that you are going to go through let me give you some steps to go through. Step 1, is apply the formula twice. Apply the formula twice. Which formula are we talking about? The y is equal to AXP. Apply it twice. All right. So that is what you are going to do. And you are going to apply it using the number before and after. So basically that is that. So here your x, the number before and the number after. All right. So basically that is that. So that is that. The number before this x is, you said the 28th unit will be 19. Have you seen that? All right. And the number after 19 will be 20. Okay. Or you can say that you put in your x. X is 20 in this case. All right. And you say the number, the next one, because you're applying the formula twice, the next x will be 20 minus 1. Right. Also the number minus 1. So that is that. So you get 19. All right. So take note of that. All right. So the number at and maybe the number before. All right. So the number at and the second one will be the number at minus 1. So let me quote it like that. So that is how you do it. So if that is the case, then let's do the whole thing again to determine y. All right. So what will be y? So A is the first unit that you have to produce. Okay. And what is the first? The first hours, and we are told that in this case is 100, right? So it's 100. And what will be x? X first one here will be, let's say, 20 minus the same learning curve, so 0.3219. Then you will do it again, and it will be 100, this time around 19, 0.3219. So basically, that is what you are going to do. All right. So this is step 1. All right. So we are calculating the time for the 20. We are doing it for the 19. All right. So let's see how it will be. So 20 raised to the power, 20 raised to the power minus 0.3219. Is that okay? Then I'm multiplying the answer by 100. And what I get is 38. For this one, what I get is 38.123. So that is what you see here. So you will do that. Then do for the 19. And obviously, if you do for the 19, you will be getting this one too. So 38.76. So basically, that is that. Now, the last step to do is to calculate the total, what do you call it? The total hours. All right. So you need to do the total hours. And in so doing the total hours, what you see is that the total hours for the 20th unit will be the total time for the 19. All right. So you do so let's say total time for 20th unit will be equal to the total time for the 19, the y for 19, and the y for 20, sorry. So let's say cumulative average for, you do this as equation 1 as equation 2. So you see for 1, or let's say for the 20th, for 20 units, so 20 units, all right, minus the same cum average, let me call it cum average, for equation 2, which is the 19 units, for 19 units. So it's not 19th, but 19 unit, 28 units, meaning that from us to move from the 19 to the 20, there was 1 unit. And so the 20th unit is what we are trying to do that thing for. All right. So basically, that is that. So you could see that what you need to do is to go in there and do the subtraction. All right. So if you are doing all these things, so I mean, this one, the cumulative time, total time, we had, it was the 20 units multiplying, so let me make this thing equal to the 20 units multiplying the time that you spent. What was the time that we had? This one, so 38.12, and so this one to be 19 units, and we are looking at how many now? We are looking at multiplying 38.76. All right, so you get your answer, then you do your subtraction. And so that is what you see here. I think, so when we multiply this, then you get 762.42 minus, all right, this one gives 736.35, and that, by that, you get the time for the 20th. So it's 26 point. So you can also confirm the figures from your end. It is 26.07 hours. So 20 units for 20 units for 19 units, and per each unit, this was what you were getting. So the average is what you had. And like I told you when we started, once you get the average, you know, the formula, Y, I said Y is what? Cumulative average. All right, so the average. So when you want to get the total, this is the cumulative average. So the average, cumulative average. If I wanted to get to the total, I multiply this. All right, so the total is. So that's the same thing that you do. All right, that's the same thing that you go through to do. All right. So basically, that is that. That is how we do a learning curve, and use it to also determine the ninth and an nth unit. So you use the nth unit as a number of units, and you subtract 1 from it to get the previous, so that we can get to know the progression. All right. So basically that. Pick any question, go through it and do it. So the next video that we'll be doing will take care of regression. All right. So see you in part 3, regression.